my name is Rosie or Taman Konakon, and today is a session about studying medicine abroad. And today we have a special guest here, Pinat or Dr. Nat here. Hello, Sawadee
Sawadee ka.
Can you please introduce yourself?
So my name is Nat. I'm currently a pediatrician at Chulalongkorn University, and I mainly do research in HIV prevention for adolescents.
Okay. Today we're basically going to be talking about studying abroad. So can you please tell us a little bit about your background and your studies in the past?
Yeah, so when I was small, my father worked for a company where we had to move to a lot of countries. So I went to international schools in various countries. And when I went to university, I went to St. George's, which is in London, and I did my medical training there and also worked in the British National Health Service, which is the health service in the UK. And afterwards, I came to Thailand and I learned Thai. I did the Thai license and then did internship and then did residency here at Chula. And I've, since residency, which was 3 years ago, I've continued working in HIV research.
Oh, that's really good. So you're fully Thai, right?
Yes, so both my parents are Thai.
But you've been abroad for such a long period of time.
Yes.
Can you tell me about your experiences? Are there any similarities or differences between studying in Thailand and abroad?
I have to say first that I never went to school in Thailand, so I don't actually know. I can guess, but I think I have taught some medical students here, and I think one of the biggest differences I've seen is here things are very collective, and so people will do things together, but I think in the West it's much more individualistically. You're taught to think independently, and you're expected to, in terms of medical training, you're expected to take much more responsibility for your own education, whereas here I think it's nice in that there's quite a lot of support that's given to medical students to learn.
How about your experiences? I've heard that you've been in an international school here in Thailand.
Yes.
How about the difference between an international school and whereas you studying in other countries? Or are there any similarities or differences?
I think when I was at school overseas and here, it wasn't that different. But when I was in school, I think international school in Thailand back then was different to what it is now, because when I was a child, you could only study in an international school if you actually had to, if you had lived overseas for over a period of time. So in the school that I went to, less than 3% of the whole school was Thai. So most people were children of diplomats, of transnational companies, and so it was a very international environment, which as I understand it, it's not really like that anymore. So I imagine it would be slightly different in terms of the culture, because of course when you go to international school, it's not just the language and the curriculum, but it's also the community and the culture that you learn. And of course when you're younger, you don't really think about, well, how is that going to affect things? But now, because I do international research, I understand much more that when you're with an international crowd, you learn how to interact with people, which then has repercussions when you get older and you work in that environment, and it helps you learn how to interact and how to work with an international community.
Okay, so you've mentioned that you studied medicine in the UK.
Yep.
Can you tell a little bit about your experiences there, what you did, and was it fun?
So yeah, I did enjoy my time there. So there were two types of courses when I was in the UK, which was in the early 2000s. So there was the graduate entry and the undergraduate entry. So I did the undergraduate entry, and so for undergraduate you could either do an intercalated BSc or Bachelor of Science with your medical degree, or just do a medical degree, and I decided just to do the medical degree. So the first 2 years were mainly preclinical, but actually it wasn't as separate as it is in Thailand. And so we did see patients from the first year. Everything was mainly case-based learning, system-based learning. We had to do what were called special study modules, which was like research projects as well. And then in the third, fourth, and fifth years, we did more clinical attachments. And so in the UK, once you finish your medical school, you get what's called a provisional licensing. And then after you work for 1 year, you get full licensing. And the whole system is based on something called the National Health Service, which is funded by the British government. And so most people after graduation become GPs, and so the system is mainly supported by GPs, and there's a small percentage that become specialists. So now most of my friends from medical school that graduated are GPs.
So did you, out of curiosity, like did you apply to medical school like with a Thai passport, or did you have like an international passport? Because from what I've heard, like it's very tough for like international students to go and study medicine in like the UK or in the US if you don't have their nationality and everything.
I think that's probably, so I went to university about 20 years ago now, so it's been a while, but when I went, I wouldn't say it was that difficult, but yes, the percentage that they took from overseas students was less. I think I had the advantage that all of my schooling had been in the British system, and so I didn't actually have to do any extra exams. I didn't have to do any English exams, and so I literally just used the qualifications that I already had to apply for university. And so was it competitive? Yes, but was it doable? Yes, I think it was doable.
Was it a tough experience for you, like studying in medicine overall? I mean, in every country it's very competitive anyways, but do you think it was hard, or are there times where there's ups and downs, or are there like, oh, it's so difficult?
I think at the end of the day, it's down to what your passions are and what you like. For me personally, I like looking after people. I like looking after sick people. And so in that sense, it was fantastic. I was very lucky to have very good friends at university, and I had a very good personal tutor who did the pastoral care side of things. But was it tough? Yes, definitely it was tough. But I think that you get through it if you have very clear goals in mind about what you want to achieve. But I think that the time that I spent there was well worth it, and all the things that I learnt there I still use today.
Did you have a lot of hands-on experience with patients in the UK?
In terms of patient contact, yes, there was a lot of, and I specifically chose the medical school I went to because there was a lot of patient contact from day one, because I'm somebody who doesn't really remember things just from a piece of paper, but if I can link that information to how it's relevant, why would I want to know that, then I can remember those things. And so so it was a good experience.
And then you did residency here in...
I did residency in Thailand, yes, and that was much harder, because by that point I'd never worked in a Thai system, not worked in a Thai culture, and also I didn't learn Thai when I was younger, and so I learned Thai probably in my mid-20s, so that was really tough, but I think people at work helped a lot, and of course for me it was because I wanted to stay with family, and so if you have that goal in mind, then you kind of have the motivation to keep going. Yeah.
Okay, so do you have any messages for like the students who are just deciding if they want to stay in Thailand for medicine or if they want to go abroad? Do you have any recommendations or anything you want to tell them?
I think that it's down to your personal values. So you have to look at the bigger picture. And I understand that you're making this when you're so young, and sometimes it's difficult to know, but I think it's still worth considering what are your values, what do you want in the long run in your life? Do you want a life of adventure? Do you want to work in Thailand, live in Thailand, or do you want to explore? And I think that if you're looking at a life that's more international, I think it's worth going overseas, because the training, I think, is much more rigorous in terms of academia. But you asked about being hands-on. I think that in terms of clinical practical skills in Thailand, because of the relative shortage of doctors, I think that you get more hands-on experience here. But I think in the West you get far less hands-on experience because of litigation. But the good thing is you're encouraged to think a lot more. There's much more critical thinking, and you have to question things a lot more. And I think that I've learned the value of that now as somebody who does research, because as a student, as a junior doctor, you're following a lot of guidelines and textbooks, and of course you don't really think about at that stage about, oh, where is this information coming from? And then at a later stage, when you come to do research, you realize that it doesn't just fall from the sky, or it's not just taken from the internet or something. It's all this information has to be synthesized from somewhere, and that's all from research.
Thank you so much for today. I hope you all had a very informative and very experienced talk today. So thank you so much.
No, it was useful.
Okay, so thank you for today. We're just gonna say bye for now. สวัสดีค่ะ